One. And we are recording with Dr. Kevin Barrett on Tuesday, May 9th, 2023 at 5:34 p.m. Eastern time, and talking about the Kremlin drone attack, which somebody pointed out didn't even knock over the flagpole on top of the Kremlin. So how dangerous was this? And was this Ukraine at all? Was this us? What do you think's going on, man?
Who knows? I don't have the security clearance necessary. That's way above my pay grade to actually know anything for sure about this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I just speculate. And
Yeah.
my speculations are usually labeled wild-eyed conspiracy theories. And they often turn out to be accurate.
That
Not
means
always.
they're true.
Yeah, they're often true.
Yeah.
Not always. But yeah, in this particular case, I thought it was hilarious that the mainstream media started screaming, false flag, Putin, false flag. The Russians did it themselves, with very little evidence for that. And the kind of, instant false flag reaction from the mainstream media was kind of hilarious in the way that it mirrored the sort of reaction that I'd started, and so many of us have had when these kind of ridiculous stories would burst into the mainstream about the Charlie Hebdo cartoonists getting slaughtered and things like that. I put a book out about that came out 6 weeks after it happened, because it only took a few days before I realized that was a false flag. And so, but the mainstream media, they thought that this Kremlin drone attack was probably a false flag like a day and a half after it happened. Why? As they claimed, it's unlikely that a Ukrainian missile could get through all the Russian air defenses and make it all the way to the Kremlin. And then it's also suspicious that it exploded in this perfectly photogenic fireball above the Kremlin without doing any real damage. Now, yeah, I can kind of get that, but that may not be true in that, number one, there are security cameras bristling around the Kremlin.
Everywhere.
Yeah. So getting some footage of something that blows up over the Kremlin is not going to be hard. Those cameras worked, unlike the cameras at the Pentagon on 9/11.
Those two that just so happened to be lined up as a car was coming by. Yeah, those finicky things.
Yeah. And then what little they finally got that they finally released, like 8 or 10 years after the fact, that really didn't show a plane. That was all very strange. You would kind of think that if a big old jumbo jetliner flies into the Pentagon, that's probably going to get caught by one of those security cameras, but somehow that didn't happen. But at the Kremlin, we have this perfect kind of this fireball. So anyway, my take on this is that the real tell whether it's a false flag or not is the media reaction.
Okay.
Now, the Russian state media downplayed this. They didn't hype it. They downplayed it. So to me, that says it's probably not a false flag. If you have a false flag, they're going to scream it out over the headlines. 9/11, 9/11, 9/11, Al Qaeda, or Charlie Hebdo, poor cartoonist slain by evil Muslims. They're going to make a huge stink in the media about it, because that's the whole purpose of a false flag. The Russians didn't really do that this time, so I don't think it was a false flag. Who knows what it was really about? And to me, the most interesting hypothesis that I've seen is that this war is not playing out so well for Ukraine, and there are rumors that Zelensky might be getting warm to trying to save his life and even his leadership by getting on board with the Chinese peace proposal. And if that's the case, then the empire needs an excuse to get rid of Zelensky. Mm-hmm. And to do that, it would be very helpful if they could plausibly blame Russia for killing Zelensky. So if they stage an apparent assassination attack on Putin, mm-hmm. credited possibly to Zelensky, and then they kill Zelensky in a false flag designed to be blamed on Putin, it looks really plausible, because, Putin was really angry that Zelensky tried to kill him. And now, Zelensky got killed. Of course it was Putin that did it. So they may be setting up taking out Zelensky. That's a possibility.
I don't think we won't.
Yeah.
Henry Kissinger, read any history book on the last 50 years.
Right. Being America's enemy can be dangerous, but being its friend is often fatal. And Zelensky may find that out.
Isn't that a Kissinger quote?
Yeah.
I'm rereading. I first read it when I was 18. I was grounded. But Tim Weiner's Legacy of Ashes, one of the better books on the CIA. And man,
yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
If you don't think we'll do this, we will do this 10 ways from Sunday. And that's probably what it is. Zelensky Zelensky, it really is it's a poetic deal with the devil, right? He's on every show, he's cheered around the world, the flag's in every profile. Don't you dare step away from the fight. The machine is rolling, and if you step away from the fight, you will be thrown right into the meat grinder. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is really more the Empire's war than it's Ukraine's war.
it's 100% the Empire's war.
Yeah, yeah.
Ukraine, that's just a coincidence that we have chosen those coordinates. That's truly about it.
Pretty much. I mean, let's face it, there is a rabid Ukrainian nationalism out there, but it affects a minority of the people of, what used to be the Ukraine, which was half Russian speakers, ethnic Russians. But that split that was engineered, sort of like the Sunni Shia split engineered with the false flags and so on in Iraq after the invasion and occupation, that whipped up a bunch of really fanatical people. And so there are these fanatical Ukro-Nazis or super nationalist Ukrainians who hate Russians. They do exist, so they're real. But yeah, that was largely engineered. And if the Empire didn't want this war to happen, it never would have happened.
Absolutely. Do you think that we're pushing for World War III because of the rise of BRICS and de-dollarization? That to put it simply, they're fucking with the money.
Oh yeah, sure. Because it's the old Thucydides trap. The number one power typically goes to war, to preemptive war, to stop the rise of the number two power. Yeah. And that happens about 2/3 to 3/4 of the time, historically, according to Graham Allison's book. So the US is obviously the number one power, and China is the rapidly rising, maybe it's already risen too far, but it's the the meteoric number two power. And now the brilliant American neocons have forced the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians and half of the world, more than half of the world, into this alliance against us. Rather than playing divide and conquer like most number one powers do, successfully quite often. Instead, these people just decided to mistreat everybody and unite everybody against us. So it's just amazing, the lack of intelligent geopolitical strategy. You ask yourself, why is that? Basically either you could be a conspiracy theorist and say, these neocons actually want to destroy America. Yeah, maybe some of them. Yeah. And then the other possibility, of course, is they're just drunk on their own hubris.
Yeah, I would tend to say the latter. I used to be a little warmer to the former, of like, this is an internal demolition of the United, and it could be both. But I also think that I like to call it, we're the third generation trust fund kids. And it's like, we've never known anything but Bentleys and private planes. And it's, don't be surprised when we start crashing a car every other week. That might be it too. We're cocky beyond any reasonable level of confidence.
Yeah, I think that's right. Well, nobody wants to be the guy who lost the empire on his watch, is what I hear. Not. Yeah. So people are still working in the government jobs, in the national security state, national security council, these kinds of positions. They often, after they retire, become more reasonable. But while they're at work, they don't want to be the ones who lost the empire. So they're pulling out all the stops, and they often get too excited about their work. They get too enthused about the project, and cocky and overweening and so on, and then hubris ends up, and they can get away with a lot of hubris and a lot of stupid mistakes because they're just so, this has been such a powerful empire. We really didn't have much competition, but now we finally do have some competition, and those mistakes are likely to put an end to the empire, or at least its number one position.
Yeah, they're starting to get a little pushback. There's never really been any consequence to our actions, relative consequences to our actions, right? We've always just kind of been able to bully them on either the financial markets or the military battleground. To jump back to this in a complete 180, I vaguely remember the Charlie Hebdo attacks, but I do always remember seeing like a video of one of the guys running up to like a cop on the ground and shooting him, and they're not being shot him in the head, and there's never any splatter. And I do remember that. And I have someone who has no stake in this, so I don't have I'm not biased towards it being real or not. I just always remember that being like, that was a point blank AK round to the forehead on white cement, and there was nothing. Could you maybe go into that? I know that that's not what we planned at
Yeah, as
all,
I
but
recall,
I'm kind of
yeah,
interested in this now.
yeah. Those point blank AK rounds straight to the forehead
Straight to the
with
dome.
no blood, no splatter, nothing. His guy's head remained intact. And what you actually see happen is there's a little puff where the blank round that was fired hits the sidewalk, and so a little puff of dust comes up. And the guy who fired the blank had the consideration to aim, a meter or something away from the guy's head, because you don't want to get hit in the head even by a blank round, really. So that was very nice of them. And of course, we were told that shot is what killed the security guard, but that can't have happened. The report, so if he's dead, which he probably was, somebody probably killed him, but it wasn't that film was not him getting killed. So what really happened? Who knows? But what we do know is that film of the Charlie Hebdo terrorists' escape from the cartoon offices where they supposedly killed all those people was taken from I believe from the roof, or either the roof or the balcony. It's been a while, of a tall building nearby, and that building, I think it was actually the roof, and the building was owned by, what's the guy's name? This Israeli billionaire who's tight with the Black Ops programs in Israel. And so he crony of Netanyahu, right? So he owns that building, and I believe it was the roof. So somebody had access to the roof of that building. They claimed it was some mysterious Polish guy who, and they didn't. I'm not even sure his actual full name was ever fully released. And so he was credited with having taken that video just by happenstance, but he's just disappeared off the face of the earth. And so that whole film of that fake shooting is beyond suspicious. But then the other kind of ridiculous thing about their escape was, where did these Charlie Hebdo terrorists go after they shot the cartoonists? Well, they went straight to the center. Was it the Marais district? Straight to the center of Jewish Paris, the Jewish neighborhood. And they went straight to the building that houses this IDF affiliate that they have a huge fundraiser party for the IDF in that building every year. So the Charlie Hebdo terrorists went out, they drove straight there, they parked in front of this IDF building, and there they supposedly switched cars. I think they dropped their car and they supposedly carjacked a car being driven by a nice Jewish guy, and disappeared. What another interesting coincidence. So there are a lot of interesting aspects to this, and the guy who did the most work on this was that Paris guy. Oh, what's his name? The guy who has he's like an Arab guy. Hisham Hamza, I think is his name, and so he did a lot of really good research on this. And what it looks like is, once again, one of these situations where the Israelis are leading the way, and they've somehow gotten into a position where the local security services, in this case the French, basically just kind of cooperate with them or get out of their way, and then the media tells their version of the story, just like with 9/11 and other incidents here.
Because we're hopping all over the place. And again, it's for anybody that doesn't know, I pushed this episode back by a half hour, so it's a shorter episode, and it's entirely my fault. And I'm gonna have to beg for Dr. Barrett's forgiveness. What do you think about? Could you explain maybe what the and this is something I've never really looked into about the World Trade Center, is the E team? What was that? Was that an art piece? And it's, for anyone that doesn't know, is like the lights on the side of the building were all turned on in a way, and it's spelled E team. And I think it was relatively soon before the attacks.
Yeah, months before the attacks. I forget how many months.
It's like where the plane hit, right?
Exactly where the plane hit. Yeah.
Exactly where the plane. What was that?
Well, they say that was Gelatin, this art group, kind of an avant-garde art outfit from, I forget which, like Eastern Middle European country, and the owners of the Trade Center. And again, it's that ownership of the Trade Center it was originally with the Port Authority. Now, the Port Authority, I think it was run at that time by Eisenberg, as I recall. Eisenberg is a Jewish Zionist billionaire plus, who I think was at that time also the head of the Republican National Committee's fundraising unit. And so this Eisenberg character, and he was tight with Larry Silverstein,
Mm-hmm.
the sex, the pimp, the glorified pimp. He started making his money as basically a pimp running these disguised brothels, strip clubs and stuff, and then started laundering his organized crime money into real estate. Became a regular telephone buddy of Netanyahu. So Silverstein and this Eisenberg, and who's the other guy? There's another one, a third. I think he was like the Australian one. He's a third Jewish Zionist, tight with Israel billionaire. They all worked together to privatize the World Trade Center. So 2 months before 9/11, they cut a sweetheart deal with Larry Silverstein.
Yeah,
and sold him. Like, Silverstein already owned Building 7, but now he just bought the rest of the Trade Center 2 months before 9/11. Yeah, and that he wasn't the high bidder. There were higher bids, but they still just handed it to him. And because New York is mobbed up, I don't think anybody objected. You'll end up in the cement life jacket at the bottom of the East River if you object. So Silverstein got the whole World Trade Center at that point. Now the gelatin thing, I think that happened while it was still run by Eisenberg and his New York Port Authority. And so gelatin was given, who knows how they, asked to be given, free run of the World Trade Center to do art projects, but they were given that. And so they were headquartered right up there at what became the place where the plane supposedly hit. And they did all kinds of structural work there, including knocking out windows and building like a balcony.
I saw that picture.
Protruding. And then apparently they also did this E-team thing where they like lit up this big, sort of neon E-team in lights, which, as you say, it was right across the same floors where the plane hit. And so they had that free access. Apparently they had security cards, they could get past all security. They had these special cards that got them past all security in the Trade Center. They were running around in there for, I don't know how long, but quite a while. And so it has been hypothesized that that could have been one of the ways that the demolition people were able to get their work done.
What the fuck?
And of course, the other suspicious thing that was going on in there at the time was this little mobbed up supposed elevator company called Ace Elevator.
Yeah, wasn't it founded like right before?
Yeah, right. Kind of
never existed, and then didn't they like go out of business after?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so they were given a contract.
It wasn't Otis. It wasn't that household name.
Right, exactly. So they got the contract to rehab the elevators, and those elevator shafts, of course, gave access to all of the structural steel in the core columns, which is what you got to take out if you're going to take them down in a demolition. So those quote unquote repairmen who were out, they were active for a long time. Those elevators were shut down for a long time during that year-long run up to 9/11. So they had a long period of access to those core columns. So look at Ace Elevator and look at Gelatin, and I would guess that one of those two, and quite possibly both. Were front groups for the people that blew up the buildings.
It's hard. I think the comedian Tim Dillon said, because there's a lot of conspiracy documentaries, but he goes, a new Pearl Harbor, it shouldn't be possible to make something that convincing if it's not based in reality. And that's, I think the first time you and I talked, I was still very much in the as I first heard you say, LIHOP, the LIHOP, the let it happen on purpose hypothesis, versus the MEHOP, the make it happen on purpose. I'm not 100% there, but I gotta be honest. My ticker is, I'm over 50% now. I'm shifting towards they did it, and they did it intentionally, and it's getting harder and harder to deny.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously wasn't Bin Laden that was sending Gelatin in there or sending Ace Elevator in there.
And if he was, then that guy's the master of the universe.
Yeah, which is
he's the greatest figure of all time. He's better than Genghis Khan and Alexander the Great. He's the OG.
Right, and that's unfortunately for better or worse. Bin Laden was really not a very competent Islamic resistance leader. They built him up to be he's the Che Guevara of the Muslim world. This sort of nonsense.
He's a rich kid.
Yeah, he was a spoiled rich guy, not particularly bright, and extremely gullible and impressionable. That was what people remembered about him. He was always looking for a people to influence him, and the sort of leadership figures. That's how he was described. So this is not the personality. He's a good talker. He could kind of give a good speech, and that's of course what built his legend. But he wasn't really an independent actor or thinker at all. And the head of what was he? The Muhammad, not Muhammad Assad, Muhammad. I'm forgetting, not Arkoon, the guy who was the Arab world's leading political analyst on Al Jazeera for years and years and years, Mohammed Hakel. He had worked for the Egyptian government for a long time at very high levels. And right after 9/11, he went public and said, blaming Al Qaeda for this is ridiculous. He said, I was, in my capacity, as an Egyptian government minister, I saw that we had Al Qaeda completely covered, infiltrated. Totally. They couldn't sneeze or use the bathroom without everybody knowing it. Not just us, he said, but all these other intelligence agencies as well. So he said, you make me laugh, but blame Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda was so infiltrated by numerous intelligence agencies. The only question really is who had enough. Which intelligence agency was able to do 9/11 as well as infiltrate and steer so-called Al Qaeda.
I tend to think that it was probably us with the Mossad. I think it was probably I think we're scratching each other's back.
Yeah, I think it was the unholy interface between the U.S. military intelligence services and their hangers-on and the Mossad. I think it's very similar to the JFK thing.
Yeah,
I think that there's an element in the national security community where fanatical hardliners and Zionists kind of overlap. And so those people together took out JFK. And I think the same type of people together did 9/11.
Not your rank and file. Yeah, your true believers at the very top, where you really can have a handful of people know and not much more.
Yeah, with 9/11, it was weird because they did signal it ahead of time quite a lot. There were all of these kinds
warnings.
Of where the red lights were blinking red, and it's kind of Richard Fuse, the CIA handler of Susan Lindauer, knew that Lower Manhattan was going to be attacked. Stay out of Lower Manhattan in late August and early September. And Randy Glass, the FBI informant, was told by Francis X. Taylor, who was Colin Powell's right-hand man, that the World Trade Center was going to be destroyed. This was during the summer of 2001. And he said, Randy, you can't talk about this destruction of the World Trade Center. He said that's it's classified. He said, and what Randy Glass claims is that he said, we're tiptoeing through a nuclear minefield now. And so, you absolutely must not ever talk about this. So that's these are just a few of the many examples of detailed foreknowledge. And of course, Bush was told, Bin Laden, will attack. And was it Bin Laden likely to attack inside the United States? And then Bush kind of whirled at the guy and snapped, "Well, you've covered your ass now." And on and on and on. There's this long, long list of these kinds of indications that it was widely known that something big was coming. But as far as the details of who was doing what, I'm sure that would have been kept at a very tight need-to-know basis. And it's very likely, I think, that there were perhaps overlapping plots or certain people that had different understandings of what was going on. That is, there may have been an American contingent that was staging some kind of provocation, but not a massively lethal one, just another provocation designed to go into Afghanistan. And then there may have been an Israeli element that wanted a huge, mega lethal New Pearl Harbor to go to permanent war against the entire Islamic world on behalf of Israel, which of course is what ended up happening.
It's in James Bamford's Shadow Factory of the ultra secret post 9/11 NSA. And then even now, even as of this morning, in reading Tim Weiner's Legacy of Ashes, they talk about how there was after the Yemen attack or the USS Cole attack, how the CIA set up a field office near Bush's ranch and quite literally said Americans will die on American soil from Al Qaeda this year. And it wasn't a secret. was very much like broadcast. Yeah, the alarms are going off, the klaxons are siren, or the sirens are blaring. We don't know when and
Sirens are
where.
klaxing.
The sirens are klaxing and the klaxons are sirening. Yeah, but it's all of it's happening, and it does almost seem like a sort of predictive preparation. Like it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming. Just seeded into the consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever? Have you? Sorry, go on.
Well, yeah, I was going to mention that there's been that recent news story about the paper trail revealing that it was actually the CIA, not the Saudis, that was babysitting Khalid al-Midhar and that other guy, those two alleged hijackers, yeah, that came over to California. And then Omar al-Bayoumi became their handler and babysitter. And he basically took them in and got them apartments and, gave them some cash and held their hands and so on and so forth. Well, Khalid al-Bayoumi, according to the anti-Saudi, contingent of truthers, is they claim that he's a Saudi intel guy. But in fact, I had his nephew on my radio show, and his nephew said that the entire extended family knows that he was working for CIA. Well, now that's been confirmed. That just a couple of weeks ago, that story came out that it's now the paperwork shows that the FBI learned that it was actually the CIA that had shepherded and babysat these hijackers. So yeah, so I scooped the media on this by more than a decade, I think.
Yeah, but you're a conspiracy theorist, Dr. Barrett. Yeah,
right. I found the guy's nephew and brought him on my radio.
You can't be trusted. No, that's hate speech.
Right, I guess. But yeah, you think that the real journalists, if they even got wind of anything like this, they would go and want to talk to the family of al-Bayoumi. If they see this guy comes on my radio show, so the entire extended family all knew he was CIA. He told everybody that he was CIA, and we all knew that was true. He was not radical or anything like that. So why wouldn't these mainstream journalists be interested in talking on the phone to some people from his family and going visiting them? I bet you a real journalist who had a salary and some travel expenses could learn a lot more about the Bayoumi family than I did just by hosting the nephew of the notorious al-Bayoumi, the shepherder of alleged hijackers.
Well, and that's when you start to realize that these aren't journalists; these are lapdogs. They're scrubbers.
Yeah, they're not interested apparently.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, that's not what they're setting out to do, and that's when you go, oh, okay, yeah, no, you don't want this to get out because that's not what your intentions are. I was gonna ask you, and I know I said I'll let you go at 6, so we'll wrap this up. Have you ever put this have you ever made, I guess, almost like a formal presentation on the MEHOP hypothesis? Because I would love to have you on, and I'll just mute my mic and sit back and listen to you for an hour. I'd love to have you on, and if you just have a full on presentation, if that's something you're interested in.
Sure, what actually might work better than that, rather than just a sort of a presentation, would be a sort of a quasi debate in which you could raise the questions that would be raised by somebody who is defending the LIHOP hypothesis.
All right, yeah.
And yeah, because and of course the first thing I would say, I'll give away the game right now just really quickly, is that you couldn't let a multiple successful hijacking happen and expect that it would succeed. In other words, if you just got out of the way and let especially these particular alleged hijackers, you tried to get out of the way so that they could successfully take over planes and fly them into targets, the chances that they would succeed in doing that would be almost nil. None of these guys could fly planes. They were like little 90-pound shrimps. The muscle guys were 95 pounds, but the others were less. I don't know, so maybe I'm slightly exaggerating. The best pilot, according to the 9/11 Commission, couldn't even solo in a Cessna. And these guys were total whatever. They were not competent people in any respect. So, but even if you were working with slightly, if you had more competent terrorists that were actually really plotting to do something like 9/11, the odds that any of them would succeed in even taking over a plane, much less successfully flying that plane, much less hitting any targets, much less having the targets just explode into nothingness at free fall speed and as controlled demolitions with setting up huge people eating clouds and all of that. There's no way that's going to happen. Like it, you could, getting out of the way would not, that would just never happen. I mean, if you're really lucky, you might get some of these clouds actually cause some trouble on a plane. Maybe somebody even gets hurt on the plane before they get wrestled to the ground. But there hasn't been a successful hijacking in the United States since, I believe, the 1970s or maybe like 1980. But that's it. That's when they ended. There are various hypotheses about why, but let's just say that you can't hijack a plane anymore, least of all just boneheads like that. So basically, if you want to let something like 9/11 happen, you have to make it happen, because there's nobody out there that's confident enough that's going to make it happen, except the Israelis. If you want to say let the Israelis do it, yeah, that's my lie hop, is they got out of the way and let the Israelis do it.
Well, because they're the A team. Yeah, no, they could do it, right? If I got out of the way, but I had a bunch of Air Force pilots and Delta Force operators, yeah, they could, right?
Yeah, who have all kinds of assets on the ground in the United States, including half of our billionaires.
Yes.
Pretty much half of our billionaires will do anything Mossad asks them to do for free. That's
well, why wouldn't you? You're all in the same group.
Yeah,
it's all the deep state demons. Of course why wouldn't you scratch your buddy's back? He's scratching yours. No, best case, and by best I mean obviously bad, but I mean best case, if you got out of the way and let it happen, you'd probably get like a Shanksville type thing. And not even because the passengers rose up, but because they would just take over the plane and then crash it. That kind of seems like the most they'd be able to do.
Yeah, and that's not impossible, but
sure,
it's pretty unlikely. The thing is, there are no radical Arab Muslims that are both brilliant enough to pull off something difficult like this, but also stupid enough to think that it would be in their strategic interests.
I'd be happy to do that, man. Because, like, as I've said, I'm more on the Lee hop, leaning towards the me hop, but I think I'd be able to offer, genuine sort of devil's advocate. It wouldn't be me like putting on a mask. It'd be me being genuinely curious. I would love to do it, man. I mean, I'll email you after this. We could set something up. I mean, that would be great. I would love to. I mean, we could do an hour, 2 hours, and just kind of go.
Yeah. Let's do that sometime. And go ahead and if you want to take some notes and write out just some of the points, if you wanted to make it easier, I could probably do a better job if I saw some of this. But or I'd be happy to wing it too. If you,
I'm up for. That's what I do every episode.
Yeah.
Take a cup of coffee and wing it, man. I'd be happy.
We'll wing it. We'll do the lie hop versus my hop. That's how we used to pronounce it back in the day, but maybe that's evolved now. Yeah. And that should be fun.
I would love to, man. I'll send you. We'll wrap this up and I'll send you an email right now. We can schedule it sometime, and that'll be the only one to do that day. Anyway, I won't put any time limit on it, and we can just go down the fucking rabbit hole.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
Hell yeah. Well, guys, please go check out Dr. Barrett. His links are in the description. And again, thank you for your patience, kicking it back half hour. I really do appreciate it. I'll send you an email. We'll wrap this up, and I'll send you an email right now, and we'll get one on the books, and we'll go down the lie hop v my hop.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks,
Dr. Barrett, thank you so much, sir. Guys, thank you for watching. Take care. Much love.